Shortly after my child was born, I had a very scary dream. I dreamed that I was in a terrible car accident in which I lost my life. For months afterwards, I was more careful every time I drove. I told myself it was just a dream and it didn't mean anything would happen. I didn't want to invest too much energy in the matter. For months later, the accident really happened. That day I was getting ready to pick my son up from his mother's house. I was driving carefully off the highway as I always do, and I was about to make a left turn at the next intersection. Then just a split second later, I was in a beautiful, peaceful place. I met my grandfather, who had passed away, and a spirit guide. They told me I had been in a serious car accident. They also showed me the scene of the accident. They said, "Now it's time for me to go home." And explained, "That place is my real home, not a home back on earth. That place is full of love and happiness, where there will be no troubles." I felt myself becoming lighter and lighter. I hadn't adapted to my current environment. I started crying nonstop. I didn't want to die. What about my son? He was only 5 months old. He will never remember me. His father doesn't even know how to take care of him. No, I didn't want to go anywhere right now. My grandfather calmed me down and he reassured me that my son and my whole family would be okay after I died. My mother will come out of her grief, it's only a matter of time. My husband will also come out of his grief and loneliness. Death is a lesson we must learn. My death is also a necessary lesson for those around me. I can accept that and I'm sure they will be fine. I've always felt at ease. What about my son? I can't leave my sons. They help me get rid of the human burden. We have wandered this beautiful place for a long time. No time exists here, it seems like this place is eternal. We discussed my life, we discussed religion, and we discussed the secrets about the soul. As humans we cannot know these secrets or we will not be able to grow on earth. The thought of my son made my heart heavy again. I could not bear the thought of him growing up without his mother. Then they showed me the future life of my son. He was a well-behaved boy. When he was about 9 years old, he had a new mother, who was a kind-hearted woman. She was good to my husband and my son, but she wanted to have another child with him. This was unacceptable to me and I knew that she could not love her children equally. This was not the outcome I wanted. I longed to go back to my son, and I could not give up my human life. I pleaded with my guide to take me back. Finally my guide allowed me to return. I was brought back to the scene of the crash. Just as I began my descent, I was told that when my child was old enough, I could return again. I accepted the offer. I was able to live with my family again. I cherished the time with my family even more because I didn't know how long I would live. I was told that it was a miracle that I survived. It was when a large truck ran a red light and then hit my minivan. Even though I was wearing a seatbelt, the doctors said there was no way I would have survived if the airbags hadn't come on. For 6 months after the accident, I tried to make sense of my life. But I was tormented by severe pain from the fracture. The doctor told me that the pain should go away within 6 months. 2 years later, the pain still hadn't gone away. The second year was also the worst year. I became so depressed that I wished it would all end. I had thought about going back to that loving place. My son was the only thing that kept me going. Now I've accepted the fact that I'm back on Earth. The second story today comes from a 25-year-old woman who died of asthma and then came to heaven. Experienced many unforgettable things. She finally chose to return to Earth again. Let's start today's second story. When I was 11 years old, I had a very bad case of pneumonia. I kept coughing at night, making it impossible for me to sleep properly. My throat was getting sore and I was having trouble breathing. I had always had respiratory problems and was later officially diagnosed with asthma. I was taken to the hospital. There, the doctor examined me. I was wrapped in cold, wet sheets as the doctors tried to relieve my soaring body temperature. After diagnosing me, they gave me penicillin. I had an allergic reaction to the penicillin, causing anaphylactic shock. I knew that I was dead. I found myself leaving my body and floating to the upper left corner of the ward. When I looked down, I saw a body wrapped in a sheet. I had lost any connection to it. It felt like I was now my true self. The doctors and nurses became very busy. But no one noticed that I was here. I was observing all this from outside my body. Through the walls, I could see my father in the hallway. In a way, I felt his concern. I wanted him to know that I was fine. When I was admitted to the hospital, the doctor scolded him sternly for not taking me there sooner. The summer before that, I was sick at my grandmother's house. My body was shaking uncontrollably. Although it was hot to the touch, I kept saying that I felt cold. My mother took my grandmother's advice and covered me with a blanket and put a hat on me. This caused my condition to get worse. The doctor was angry with my mother for what she did. He said this would kill me, all of which my mother told me later. Suddenly, a light appeared in the ward and it lit up the whole room. I couldn't see anything else but this light. The light grew brighter and brighter, it was so pure and magnificent. I saw a glowing corridor. I didn't resist, because it felt so inviting. I merged with the light, it was me and I was it, there was no difference. I continued along the corridor. The light was so intense that no light source on earth could compare to it. I felt profound love. Everything was so perfect. Here, I had no other thoughts but happiness and love. A living being appeared before me, who had no fixed shape, who radiated pure love. We communicated without words, all by telepathy. This form of communication was all-powerful, and we instantly read each other's thoughts. There was not a single mistake. Every expression is accurate and perfect. No one here has secrets. And no one lies. We all heard each other's voices. I had the feeling that he was God. I felt like I was home. I was surrounded by love. God helped me review my past life before deciding whether to stay here or return to Earth. I gave a straightforward answer, I wanted to stay. He patiently told me, I can indeed stay. I looked at my life before I made my decision. I knew I needed to do this, and even though I wasn't very reluctant, I agreed. It was like watching a movie where every detail was shown. He didn't comment on what I had done. I could see how my actions affected other people's. I could feel what they were feeling at the time. I see it all from their perspective, and then they influence others they meet. These influences go on and on. I see that our love creates connections that create a timeless beauty. A small thing can also have a huge impact. For example, if I help someone in trouble, the event may change their mood for the rest of the day. She passed that pleasure back to those around her. In a way, I hear him thanking me. We are inherently loving beings. There was an interlude in this experience where I was taken to another world. It was similar to Earth in that there were forests and seas there too. Anything here is bigger than on Earth. There were trees full of fruit, very lush foliage, and brightly colored birds. Everything is alive, every flower and every grain of sand. The air was filled with the scent of flowers. Even now, when I smell the lilies, I can recall the memory. Everything here is so vivid. Everyone is floating in the air, very close to the ground. We can penetrate each other. As I glide slowly, my hands pass through the flowers, merging with them and becoming part of them. When I pass another, our thoughts immediately communicate. I also see my future life. If I choose to return to Earth, these memories will be erased. I saw my future child. He was so cute. I could feel my love for him. I also saw how sad my mother would be if I didn't go back. I saw my mother lying in the hospital too. Very weak. Calling my name all the time. She couldn't forgive herself and thought my death was her fault. I also met someone there who felt like my sister. My mother had told me that I had a sister before I was born. She told me, our mother would be very sad. If I choose to go back, I will forget about it all for a while. To my relief, everything will be fine. As I was making my final decision, I came to the last place. It was a huge space in which all my deceased relatives appeared before me. There were hundreds of them, but most of them I didn't recognize. I was stunned. The message from all of them together was, "Welcome home. We have been waiting for you." The words brought tears to my eyes as we waited for each other. We waited for everyone. No matter how long it takes. I gave my final answer, I want to go back. I don't want my mother to live in constant self-blame. I saw my future child and I wanted to experience the joy of motherhood. Then I had the feeling of going backwards, like everything was playing backwards. Now it was faster, and when it felt that way, I asked one last question, do I have a chance to come back here again? And stay here all the time? I got an affirmative answer. Yes, my child, this is your forever home. The doctor gave me an injection of adrenaline to make my heart beat again. Then I was back in my body. I think I understand a lot of things. What I have told above is a small part of my experience. I tried to express it as clearly as I could, but I didn't know what words to use for a lot of it. But you just need to believe one thing, that God exists, that He loves each of us, and not to lose hope in life. Everything will be fine. God is with you.